Carly Donovan's heels tapped rhythmically on the polished hardwood floor as she stepped into her cozy home office in central London. Outside, rain threatened to spill from thick gray clouds, casting a cool, subdued light through the window. The air smelled faintly of last night's black tea and the lingering hint of her rose-scented candle. She shrugged off her trench coat, settled into a plush swivel chair, and booted up her laptop. It was already mid-morning, and she had a heap of emails to tackle. A sharp chime indicated new messages. One subject line stood out: "Update on Aaron Winston from Hannah." Carly's lips pressed together in a tight line as she clicked it open. For a moment she rubbed her temples, recalling the swirl of complications that always seemed to follow Aaron Winston around. "Hi, Miss Donovan. I know you said to email if anything changed with Aaron, but it's been over a month since he stopped talking to me altogether. I really thought we had something, guess not. I'm still confused. Please let me know if there's any chance to fix things," Carly exhaled, shaking her head. "Another heartbreak," she muttered under her breath. Hannah was a bright, soft-spoken woman who'd once worked as a personal assistant in Manchester. She'd been companion number one for Aaron Winston, an attempt at pairing him with someone gentle who'd let him take the lead. But evidently the match had fizzled faster than a dud firecracker. Carly scrolled down, scanning Hannah's emotional plea. The words brimmed with heartbreak and regret, tinged by the faint hope of a second chance. But Carly knew from experience, Aaron rarely gave second chances. He had an uncanny way of immersing himself in a person's life, then pulling away abruptly, leaving them more confused than ever. She clicked away from the email, pulling up Aaron's digital file. A large note up top read, "Client, Aaron Winston, paid $100,000 to date. Status, unresolved." Carly recalled the day Aaron first strode into her private matchmaking office, looking every bit the confident CEO. He'd practically flashed his gold watch in her face as he announced he wanted someone different, unique. Money was no object. He said it with that ironic grin, as if he found the entire situation amusing. Yet behind those steely eyes, Carly sensed a man desperate for something real. Yes, he'd paid a fortune over the last year. Two carefully selected companions, Hannah and Veronica, each representing a starkly different personality, had come and gone. Hannah was sweet, loyal, almost too agreeable, like warm butter on toast. Veronica was a bold ex-model with a sharp tongue, a woman who refused to yield an inch to Aaron's controlling streak. Neither worked out. Hannah bored him. Veronica fought him nonstop. Carly sighed, massaging the tension at the back of her neck. Leaning forward, she opened her physical binder. She still preferred the smell of paper and ink for crucial files. She flipped to Hannah's page. "Sweet, but too passive," Aaron had said. Then Veronica's page, fiery, ambitious, with a string of outraged texts after she stormed off during a weekend getaway. Carly's notes read, "Hannah, lasted 2 months, ended abruptly. Veronica, lasted 3 days, ended explosively." Carly found the situation borderline ludicrous. "He's like a cat that bats away every toy I give him," she murmured, scanning the rest of the notes. Just as she was about to close the folder, she spotted the tab for Adeline Moore, the woman she'd recently interviewed. Adeline's personal interview had stretched over 2 days in a cafe near Sussex. Carly remembered Adeline's cautious smile, the nervous tapping of her fingertips on the table. She wasn't your typical big-city socialite. Instead, she lived in a quaint cottage and spent her time cultivating lavender and lilies in her greenhouse. Carly had found her intriguing, especially once Adeline opened up about her complicated past. Adeline possessed a dual nature, calm and warm on the surface, yet Carly sensed an undercurrent of something deeper: pain, regret, possibly anger. Adeline had called it her shadow side, though she never used the exact term with Carly. She merely hinted that she'd once made a serious mistake while in a rage. Carly had gently pried enough to learn it involved a near-violent incident with an old classmate. The courts eventually dropped major charges, but the emotional scars remained. By the end of the second day's interview, Carly had decided Adeline had just enough spirit to stand up for herself, yet also a softness that might mesh with Aaron if he'd learned to adapt. The memory made Carly's heartbeat quicken. This was a gamble. Adeline didn't fit neatly into any box. She wasn't docile like Hannah, nor was she confrontational like Veronica. She was layered. Now, reading Hannah's email only solidified Carly's determination. If she didn't find Aaron a suitable match soon, she might be refunding an enormous chunk of cash or worse, tarnishing her reputation as the top matchmaker for wealthy elites. But she refused to let that happen. She prided herself on reading people, on forging connections that others deemed impossible. Tugging her phone from the desk, Carly tapped out a quick text to Aaron. "Aaron, we need to talk. I have a new plan for you. Call me back." CD. She set the phone down, mind swirling with details. The location for this new arrangement was crucial. The city had too many distractions and too much convenience. Her last attempt at a countryside escape was a French villa for Veronica, but that had turned into a 3-day meltdown. Now Carly had discovered an English country estate called Orchard Lake House, belonging to an older gentleman named David Franklin. Remote, picturesque, with minimal cell reception. Perfect for pushing Aaron out of his comfort zone. Carly had discreetly arranged a deposit. She just needed final confirmation that Aaron would actually go. Glancing at the clock, she realized nearly an hour had passed. A soft rumble of thunder in the distance hinted at an incoming storm. The atmosphere matched her sense of urgency. She clicked the corner of Adeline's file, gazing at the small photograph. A woman with large, thoughtful eyes and hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Carly smiled. "Adeline Moore," she whispered. "If anyone can keep up with Aaron Winston, it might be you." Her phone buzzed. A reply from Aaron. "Have time in half an hour. Let's talk then." Carly closed her laptop with a determined snap. She pictured Adeline's quiet confidence, Aaron's restless energy, and prayed she wasn't about to stage yet another heartbreak. But deep in her gut, she felt the slow burn of excitement. This could be it, the match that either saves or sinks her reputation. All she had to do was convince both of them to take the leap. Outside, the first droplets of rain pattered against the window, streaming down in diagonal lines. The sky looked heavy, bruised like an angry shadow, an omen or a challenge. Carly wasn't sure, but she'd face it, head-on. Night wrapped itself around London's upscale Mayfair district like a velvet curtain. Aaron Winston stood at the grand window of his penthouse, staring at the city lights that blinked like distant stars. His reflection in the glass looked sharp, defined a tall, lean man with a crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He sipped from a half-empty glass of sparkling water, ignoring the hush of traffic below. Aaron's eyes flicked down to his phone. He'd just gotten off a brief call with Carly Donovan, his so-called matchmaker. The conversation was short, almost perfunctory. "Aaron, I have a new companion for you. This is your third attempt." "Third time's the charm, right?" he drawled sarcastically. "Well, let's hope so. I've arranged a rural stay for you, Orchard Lake House, 1 month." "A month? That's impossible. I have client meetings. You can do remote check-ins. Trust me, if you want results, this is the plan." "I'll think about it." He pinched the bridge of his nose, exhausted. His mind jumped back to earlier fiascos. Hannah so sweet it made his teeth ache. She'd always say, "Whatever you want, Aaron," and he found no thrill in that. It was like having a personal assistant rather than a companion. Then there was Veronica. The memory made him let out a low whistle. She had been fiery, indeed challenging him at every turn. That first night in the French villa, they argued about restaurant choices, about the temperature in the bedroom, about whose job it was to call the taxi. On day 3, she flung a wine glass at the wall and stormed off in a rage, calling him a controlling jerk. Looking back, he guessed he kind of was. Aaron set his water glass down on a sleek table. Across the room, a few leftover takeout containers from a fancy sushi place reminded him that he practically lived on restaurant food. House staff came by weekly, but everything else in his life felt temporary passing flings, endless business deals, manicured illusions. A pang of dissatisfaction gnawed at his chest. He'd poured a fortune into Carly's service, hoping to find someone who could match him in intensity, but also offer a genuine connection. So far, it had been a string of failures. He ambled over to the couch and flicked on the TV, volume muted, scanning the scrawling headlines of a late-night finance show. Winton Softcom surges in quarterly report, one ticker read. That should have made him proud. He'd built Winton Softcom from a scrappy startup to a recognized name in AI-based solutions. Yet success left him feeling strangely hollow. Maybe Carly was right. Maybe he needed to do something radical, away from city lights and boardrooms. An older memory drifted to the surface. A year ago, the night he first signed up for Carly's exclusive matchmaking. He'd felt unstoppable in business, but lost in his personal life. He wanted a companion who wouldn't revolve around his wealth alone, but also wouldn't try to dominate him entirely. That was the conundrum. He liked control. He also craved a spark of unpredictability in a partner. His phone lit up with a text from a longtime friend. "Heard you're AWOL again this weekend? What's the big plan, Winston? Another exotic fling?" Aaron rolled his eyes. Everyone seemed to think that was all he did jet around, chase new experiences. Sometimes he believed it too. "But maybe," he muttered, "just maybe there's more." He grabbed his phone and typed a quick message to Carly. "Fine, I'm in. But don't you dare fail me this time." Setting the phone aside, Aaron decided to do some damage control with his schedule. He had a major client pitch on Friday, then a partner meeting Monday. Could he manage those remotely from the English countryside? Possibly, with a decent hotspot, though Carly warned coverage might be spotty. This was definitely out of his comfort zone. Still, he felt a flicker of intrigue. Who was this new companion? Carly had said next to nothing about her, only that she was different from the last two. Mysterious, maybe. Part of him liked the chase. He tried not to dwell on the cost he'd forked over enough money to buy a modest flat, all in search of a fulfilling relationship. He sank into the couch, eyes half closed. Memories of Hannah crying on the phone, Veronica shrieking insults, all the messy endings. He told himself each time that it was them, not him. But a small, nagging voice whispered that maybe he was part of the problem. Maybe he demanded too much or gave too little. He pushed that thought aside. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering London skyline. But in his mind's eye, he pictured a wholly different scene. Green fields, maybe an orchard or lake, starry nights with no neon reflections. The idea both unsettled him and pulled at him like an unfamiliar gravity. Reaching for his phone again, he skimmed a few business emails, then scrolled to see if Carly had any updates. Nothing new. He set an alarm for early morning. If he was truly leaving for a month, he'd have to coordinate with his CFO, ensure final approvals were delegated. He rubbed his temples, cursing the inconvenience, yet also feeling a strange sense of possibility. "Carly Donovan," he said aloud. "This better be worth it." The city glowed beyond the glass, but the penthouse felt oddly quiet. No hum of conversation, no real companionship. It struck him how lonely success could be, a fortress of polished stone where nobody got close enough to see your cracks. He snorted softly. Maybe that's exactly why he needed a place with no distractions, no easy excuses to run back to the office. Maybe he needed to test himself in a place without the safety net of assistants, streaming Netflix, or staff ready to cater to his every whim. He pressed a hand to his face, feeling a tinge of stress. 1 month, he whispered. Just me and this new woman I know nothing about. The thought spiked adrenaline through his veins. He couldn't decide if it felt more like a risk or an adventure. The pendulum clock in the hall chimed 11. Aaron forced himself to stand, cross the living room, and flick off the lights. Darkness cloaked the penthouse except for the gentle glow from the city below. He turned his back to it, heading down the hallway to his bedroom. The next few days would be a whirlwind, finishing up crucial tasks, packing for a rural hideaway. The notion was insane, but he'd do it. Because deep down he hated failing, and he'd spent too much money and too much time to give up now. As he pulled the bedroom door shut behind him, he recalled Carly's final words on the phone. "Trust me on this, Aaron. I have a feeling about you two." He didn't trust easily, but he was out of moves. He flicked on a bedside lamp, gazing at crisp linen sheets. For the first time in a long while, a small ember of hope warmed his chest. Or maybe it was just curiosity. Either way, he'd soon find out. Sunlight peeked through the swirling morning mist that enveloped a quaint cottage near Sussex. The thatched roof glistened with dew, and a line of potted lavender plants formed a gentle purple border around the front steps. Inside, Adeline Moore stood in her modest kitchen, carefully wrapping a bundle of freshly harvested lavender stems with twine. The fragrance was calming, like a gentle lullaby. She wore a simple floral blouse, faded jeans, and her hair pulled back into a low ponytail, practical and unassuming. She placed the lavender bundle in a cardboard box by the door, labeled for shipment to a local florist. This was her quiet life, raising lavender, lilies, and an assortment of herbs, selling them online and at local markets. Not exactly glamorous, but it kept her anchored, gave her a sense of purpose and routine. Yet even as she inhaled the soothing floral aroma, Adeline felt the churn of anxiety beneath the surface. Lynn. That darker echo inside her always stirred whenever she sensed big changes on the horizon, and a big change was definitely coming. A day ago, she'd finished a 2-part interview with Carly Donovan in a nearby cafe. She hadn't planned on joining any matchmaking program, but a friend insisted, "You need to meet new people, Adeline. Step out of your shell." So she'd humored the idea. Carly was bright, professional, with a knack for asking incisive questions. After hours of conversation, Adeline left feeling drained but oddly relieved, as though she'd confessed hidden truths to a compassionate stranger. She still remembered Carly's gentle yet probing tone. "Tell me about your past. What made you so wary of relationships?" Adeline had hesitated, then spilled out the bare-bones version. In her late teens, she'd lost her temper in a confrontation with a classmate named Belinda. That rage escalated to a near-disastrous moment. She'd almost pushed Belinda under the water in a lake behind their school. They both survived, but the aftermath shattered Adeline's family ties, her friendships, everything. She called that side of her Lynn, a name she grabbed from a horror novel, symbolizing the monstrous reflection she feared. No criminal charges stuck, but everyone who witnessed that day never looked at her the same. "I was terrified of what I might do if I lost control again," she'd murmured to Carly. Even now, years later, she mostly kept to herself, throwing her passion into plants, crossbreeding new strains of lavender. She'd become cautious around people, especially men, worried that if she felt cornered or overwhelmed, Lynn might reappear in full force. The memory of Carly's thoughtful gaze still lingered. "Adeline," Carly had said softly, "I think you have more strength and kindness than you give yourself credit for. I also sense a depth that someone out there truly needs." Adeline had blushed, uncertain how to respond. She'd never let anyone see that duality, her gentle, nurturing side alongside the fierce, wounded creature within. But Carly seemed unafraid. Now, standing in her cottage, Adeline stared at the text Carly had sent earlier in the morning. "Adeline, it's official. You'll be meeting Aaron Winston. I've arranged for you to stay at Orchard Lake House first. I'll send more details soon." Reading his name made her stomach flip. She didn't know him personally, only glimpsed a quick mention. A wealthy CEO, difficult to please. Honestly, that sounded intimidating. "So I'm supposed to fix a rich man with an attitude problem?" she muttered under her breath, setting down her phone. But Carly had insisted this arrangement could be beneficial, a chance for both sides to break their usual patterns. Adeline paced to the window, gazing across the small patch of farmland behind her cottage. The fog had almost lifted, revealing rows of lavender swaying in a gentle breeze. Her heart fluttered. She'd have to leave all this behind for a month. Could she do it? She'd have a neighbor water the plants, handle any deliveries. It was nerve-wracking, but a spark of curiosity and perhaps longing tugged at her. Maybe it was time. She couldn't hide forever in this tranquil bubble. She recalled how, during the interview, Carly calmly asked, "What if you get upset? How do you handle that side of you now?" "I walk away. I meditate. I focus on my plants," Adeline replied. "I haven't had a violent outburst in years, but that fear always lingers. I can't guarantee it won't happen if I'm pushed too far." "What if you found someone strong enough to understand you?" Carly suggested. "Someone who wouldn't judge but also wouldn't let you spiral." Adeline had nearly laughed at the absurdity, but the seriousness in Carly's eyes made her wonder if such a person existed. Maybe it was Aaron Winston. Maybe it wasn't. The only way to find out was to go to that countryside estate, face him, and see if they could help each other in some bizarre, carefully orchestrated retreat. Still, she had doubts. She whispered, "Am I ready to let someone in?" The question hovered in the quiet air. She'd built this peaceful life to contain herself, to avoid letting Lynn rise again. Was she risking everything by stepping into unknown territory with a stranger? A sudden beep on her phone startled her. Another message from Carly. "Train ticket booked for tomorrow morning. I'll pick you up at the station, then drive you to Orchard Lake House. Hang in there, Adeline. This could be your fresh start." Adeline typed a quick acknowledgement, her pulse hammering. Tomorrow, that soon. She drew in a slow breath, letting the lavender scent soothe her nerves. She pictured orchard trees, a lakeside view, no bustling neighbors, just hush and green space, almost like the calm she found in her own fields. Perhaps it wouldn't be so different from her cottage, except she'd be living with a man rumored to be controlling, impatient, and heartbreakingly alone, if rumors were true. She glanced at a small framed photo on her windowsill, a younger Adeline, beaming in front of a greenhouse, her parents beside her. That was before everything fractured. "Maybe this is my path to forgive myself," she murmured. She needed to prove, once and for all, that she could trust someone without letting anger or fear sabotage it. Her phone rang suddenly, Carly again. Adeline answered. "Hello, Carly," she greeted softly. "Hey, just confirming you're all set for tomorrow. I'll handle the groceries and initial stocking at the house. You'll have a day or so before Aaron arrives." Adeline's voice quivered. "I appreciate that. And Adeline, just be yourself. But don't be afraid to show that hidden strength, okay?" A wry smile curved her lips. "I'll try." When the call ended, Adeline felt a swirl of anticipation. She forced herself to keep packing. A few clothes, her favorite gardening gloves, a small first aid kit, plus a paperback novel or two. She paused by the door, eyeing the reflection in the hallway mirror. Her hazel eyes looked uncertain but not entirely afraid. Slowly, she touched the edge of the mirror. "Lynn," she whispered, "if you're in there, I hope you stay calm. This is our shot at something better." The hush of the cottage pressed around her as though listening. She stepped outside onto the stone path, inhaling deeply. The sun had broken through the mist, bathing the lavender rose in a golden hue. She let that image fill her mind, a symbol of growth and serenity. Tomorrow, she'd step out of her comfort zone, heading toward a place called Orchard Lake House and a man named Aaron Winston. Whether it ended in sorrow or joy, she had no choice but to find out. Overhead, the morning sky bloomed with soft blues and pinks as Adeline Moore tugged her small suitcase through the modest train station near Sussex. The place was bustling with travelers, though not nearly as crowded as London's major stations. Her breath hitched with nerves, but she forced herself to keep going. A crisp breeze brushed her cheek, carrying the faint smell of coffee from a nearby kiosk. She spotted Carly Donovan almost immediately. Clad in a stylish navy blazer and holding a phone to her ear, Carly waved with her free hand. Once they met, Carly ended the call. "You made it," she said brightly, though her eyes scanned Adeline's face, clearly measuring her mood. "Ready for an adventure?" Adeline let out a shaky laugh. "I'm not sure I'd call it that, but let's say I'm open-minded." They walked together to Carly's car, a sleek black sedan parked by the curb. The trunk popped open with a beep, and Adeline loaded her suitcase. Carly drove them out of the station lot and onto a winding country road, flanked by rolling hills dotted with hedgerows. The conversation in the car felt cautious, but comfortable. "How do you feel?" Carly asked, adjusting the rearview mirror. "Nervous," Adeline admitted, "but kind of curious, too. I keep wondering what he's like. Hannah's email must have been intense." Carly glanced at her. It was. Hannah was hurt, obviously, but that's in the past now. Aaron's got layers, I think. They made a brief stop at a local market for fresh produce, apples, bread, cheese, some meats. Adeline tried to keep her mind from spiraling, focusing on the rustic charm of the little shop with its rough wooden shelves and friendly shopkeeper. Back on the road, Carly explained the final approach. Orchard Lake House sits on about 20 acres of orchard land, apples, pears, maybe some old quince trees. There's a small lake or large pond, depending on who you ask. David Franklin, the owner, let me rent it for a month. He won't be around much, but if we need him, he's only a phone call away. Adeline peered out the window, watching farmland transition into more wooded terrain. A scattering of drizzle pattered the windshield, then quickly subsided, leaving the road glistening. The air carried a sweet hint of blossoms from the orchard they were nearing. Finally, the car turned onto a narrow gravel lane lined with overgrown hedges. At the end stood Orchard Lake House, an old stone structure with ivy creeping along the walls, its roof gently sloping. It had an air of stately grace, but also a lived-in warmth, as though it held centuries of stories within its walls. A large wooden door faced them, flanked by tall windows with slightly foggy glass. Adeline climbed out, feeling the crunch of gravel underfoot. She inhaled deeply, yes, the faint smell of ripe apples in the distance mingling with damp earth. Carly popped the trunk again, handing her the groceries. Let's get you settled. Inside, the foyer opened to a cozy living room with worn wooden beams overhead, an impressive fireplace dominating one wall. The furniture was a mix of vintage armchairs and a sturdy coffee table. A hallway led deeper into the house. Sunlight spilled through wide windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Not quite the Four Seasons, Carly joked softly, but it's comfortable. Adeline nodded, placing the grocery bags on a small kitchen counter. The kitchen was rustic stone floors, brick walls, an old-fashioned range. She imagined it would be a challenge if she wanted modern convenience, but she felt a twinge of excitement at the thought of cooking with fresh orchard produce. The quiet was broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere down the hallway. Carly set Adeline's suitcase near a broad staircase. Aaron's set to arrive in about 2 days. You'll have a chance to breathe and get used to this place first. Adeline exhaled, relieved for that buffer. She strolled around the living room, eyes darting to the large windows that overlooked a gentle slope of orchard trees. A small lake glittered beyond, calm as a polished mirror. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Carly's expression softened. "I'm glad you think so. You deserve somewhere peaceful. And for Aaron, well, let's just say no Wi-Fi except a shaky hotspot might do him some good." They shared a small laugh. Then Carly's smile grew serious. "Listen, Adeline, I'm heading back to London this afternoon. That means you'll be on your own tonight and tomorrow. If there's any issue, call or text me. This entire arrangement is about letting you two form a genuine bond or at least test your compatibility without the usual noise." Adeline's heart pounded. "And if I can't handle it?" Carly touched her arm gently. "No one's locking you in. If things go south, call me. But try not to run at the first conflict. Sometimes conflict is how we grow." Those words echoed in Adeline's mind as she helped unload the last of the supplies. She was reminded of the sharp pang of guilt whenever she thought of that day by the lake, years ago, her near assault on a classmate. She'd avoided confrontation so obsessively since then. Maybe it was time she faced that fear. They walked upstairs, finding 2 bedrooms with antique furniture and large windows. Carly pointed to the slightly larger room with an attached bathroom. "You take this one," she said with a wink. "Let Aaron figure out his own space when he arrives." Adeline set her suitcase beside the old wooden bed, running her fingers over the carved headboard. It felt surreal, being away from her cottage, about to share this house with a man she'd never met. "I'll be okay," she muttered under her breath, steeling herself. She sensed the flicker of Lynn inside, that uneasy presence that rose whenever anticipation or tension built up. But she breathed through it. Minutes later, Carly was at the door, car keys in hand. "Remember, I'm just a phone call away," she said, giving a reassuring squeeze to Adeline's shoulder. "Be patient with him. He's not a monster, just complicated." Adeline forced a smile. "I'm complicated too, apparently. Thanks, Carly. Safe drive." As the sedan disappeared down the gravel path, silence descended like a gentle fog. Adeline stood at the threshold of the old house, gazing out at the orchard. A breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the sweet-tart scent of apples. She lingered a moment, letting nature's gentle hush calm her nerves. Then she headed indoors, determined to make the place livable, starting with the kitchen. She found a half-stocked pantry, some pots and pans that had seen better days, and a rack of spices left behind thyme, rosemary, and a few jars she couldn't quite decipher. The idea of cooking in this rustic space felt oddly thrilling. She rummaged through the groceries Carly had purchased. Fresh bread, cheese, tomatoes, eggs enough to get by for a few days. After organizing the food, she padded into the living room and spotted an old piano in the corner dusty keys, the edges chipped. She lifted the cover, pressed a few notes. They sounded out of tune, but it stirred a sense of nostalgia in her. She used to dabble in piano as a teen, back before everything went haywire. Maybe she'd try again, in quiet hours, if her confidence allowed. The afternoon sun cast golden beams across the floor. Adeline sank onto a plush armchair, letting herself absorb the atmosphere. For the first time, she realized how significant this moment was. Stepping away from her safe hideaway, trusting Carly's judgment that some man named Aaron Winston might be worth the risk. She felt a swirl of apprehension and hope. She thought of the orchard, the lake, the promise of near-total isolation. She'd have to rely on old-school reading, perhaps journaling, to fill the hours. And eventually, she'd face Aaron, this wealthy CEO who'd left heartbreak in his wake. Would they clash from the start, or form an unlikely understanding? She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift. Tomorrow she'd explore the orchard, maybe gather some apples, see if she could conjure a decent homemade pie. Then, in 2 days, Aaron would arrive. That single fact made her heart gallop. She whispered a vow under her breath. Don't run. Don't snap. Just see what happens. For now, Orchard Lake House stood quiet and comforting around her, like an old friend welcoming her with open arms. She'd be alone in its halls tonight, listening to the creaks and sighs of ancient wood, the hush of the orchard outside. Adeline inhaled deeply, tasting possibility in the air. A thin veil of morning mist clung to the winding road as Aaron Winston guided his rental car through southwestern England's countryside. His sleek black sedan felt almost out of place on this narrow lane, edged by wild hedges and rows of apple and citrus trees. In the distance, soft clouds drifted across a pale blue sky, promising a mild day. But inside the car, Aaron's mood was anything but mild. "Where in the world is the GPS taking me?" he muttered, tapping the console. The display froze again, courtesy of the spotty signal. He bunched his shoulders in irritation. No phone reception, no Wi-Fi, just farmland and endless orchard. Carly had warned him, but he still hadn't fully believed it. At last, the gravel path broadened, revealing Orchard Lake House up ahead. The site was strangely picturesque, an old stone building softened by ivy creeping over parts of the walls, with a sloping roof and tall windows. Surrounding it were neat rows of apple trees, along with a few orange and lemon plants that seemed out of place in England's climate. A gentle breeze carried the tart-sweet aroma of orchard fruit, mingled with fresh dew. Aaron pulled the car to a stop, gravel crunching under the tires. He exhaled, trying to bury the sense of annoyance. "A month here, let's hope it's not a total waste," he murmured, shoving the door open. A cool rush of air brushed his face, carrying faint bird calls from beyond the orchard. Stepping out, he ran a hand through his neatly trimmed dark hair, surveyed the estate. He wore a tailored navy blazer and jeans that felt a tad too polished for country living. Slinging his leather duffel over one shoulder, he eyed the main entrance. That's when he noticed her Adeline Moore standing on the porch. She was dressed simply in a light sweater and jeans, hair tied back loosely, as though she'd been busy around the house. A tentative smile curved her lips. Aaron's heart gave a quick jolt. He'd expected someone older, maybe colder. But Adeline appeared warm, albeit cautious. Something about her hazel eyes felt like an invitation and a barrier all at once. He strode forward, trying not to let the rocky ground slow him. "So you're Adeline, right?" he said. The corners of his mouth lifted in a half-smirk. Without waiting for her response, he leaned in as if to greet her with a quick peck on the cheek. After all, Carly had referred to her as his companion, so he assumed some level of familiarity. Adeline stiffened, placing a firm hand against his chest. "Whoa," she said quietly, stepping back. "We haven't actually met, you know." Her polite smile wobbled a bit, eyes darting with uncertainty. Aaron's mouth twitched. Embarrassment flickered like a match inside him, swiftly replaced by irritation. "Sorry," he muttered, though the word tasted bitter. "I assume never mind." He took a breath, tamping down his frustration. "Aaron Winston." "Adeline Moore," she replied, voice soft. Her gaze swept over him, probably noticing the crisp lines of his blazer, his shiny leather shoes both entirely unsuited for orchard life. "Carly said you'd be arriving this morning." "Lucky me," he said, glancing around. Then he tried for politeness. "So you've been here a couple of days?" She nodded, long enough to realize it's pretty rustic, and, well, there's no proper Wi-Fi. He snorted. "Yeah, I found that out the hard way." An uneasy silence fell. In the distance, a finch chirped happily, mocking the tension. Adeline cleared her throat. "You must be tired from the drive. I can help you with your bags if you want." She eyed the duffel and small suitcase in his trunk. "I've got it," he said, hefting them with a curt nod. "Show me inside?" She guided him through the heavy wooden door into a wide foyer. The house's interior smelled faintly of old wood and apple blossoms, courtesy of an open window. Aaron paused to take in the rustic living room, a large fireplace built of stone, creaky floorboards, and worn armchairs around a wooden coffee table. Everything screamed countryside charm, but also limited comfort. "Where's the router?" he asked abruptly, scanning for a sign of modern technology. Adeline tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, looking slightly amused. "We have a flimsy hotspot that works sometimes near the windows," she said, "but mostly you'll have to rely on local phone data, which is also iffy." He let out a low growl under his breath. "Great. So we're stuck in the dark ages." A flicker of annoyance crossed her features. "I'm managing," she said gently. "It's only for a month, right?" "Right." Aaron pressed his lips together as though trying not to bark out a sarcastic retort. After a beat, he tried to rein in his frustration. "All right, fine. Where's my room?" She led him upstairs to a corridor with 2 bedrooms. "Pick whichever. I've been using the one on the left," she offered, pointing. "You can have the other. Carly set out fresh linens, I believe." Aaron nodded. He set his suitcase on the bed in the right-hand room, then looked around. The walls were painted a faded cream, the window overlooking orchard trees below. A small antique dresser stood by the wall, and a modest armchair huddled in the corner. Without Wi-Fi or TV, it felt desolate, but he refused to show vulnerability, so he turned to Adeline. "Appreciate it." She hovered by the doorway, arms loosely folded. "If you want some tea or coffee, I can start the kettle. Or, well, if you prefer time alone to settle in," he cut in. "Coffee would be good, thanks." She nodded, disappearing down the stairs. Aaron exhaled once she was gone, running a hand through his hair again. This definitely wasn't a 5-star hotel, but he forced himself to remember Carly's pep talk. "Open mind, remember? This is your shot to do something different, to find a companion that fits." If he wanted results, he had to give it a fair chance. He unzipped his duffel, swapping his blazer for a comfortable sweater. As he did, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror atop the dresser. His reflection showed tense shoulders, eyes that looked more drained than he'd care to admit. "You wanted to get away from the city's noise, Winston," he muttered at his reflection. "Now live with it." Downstairs, he found Adeline in the kitchen, fiddling with an old electric kettle on the counter. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans teased the air. She cast him a small, polite smile. "It should be ready in a minute." He leaned against the doorframe, studying the cozy kitchen. Pots and pans hung from a wooden rack overhead. An earthenware bowl of apples sat on a side table. Light slanted in through a window, illuminating the dust motes like tiny sparks drifting in the hush. The entire scene was so rural and old-fashioned, he almost expected a horse to poke its head in. "How do you handle living like this?" he asked, unable to keep the sharp edge from his tone. She shrugged, placing 2 mugs on the counter. "I'm used to a quiet life in Sussex. This is not so different. Peaceful, really." "Peaceful," he echoed, letting the word hang. He wasn't sure he'd ever known real peace. Silence stretched, but for once it didn't feel completely awkward. The kettle clicked off. Adeline poured steaming water through a small filter, releasing a rich, nutty fragrance. "Here," she said, sliding a mug his way. Cream? Sugar? No sugar, he said gruffly, taking the mug. He lifted it to his lips, relishing the warmth. The bitterness soothed his jangled nerves. She sipped from her own cup, eyes flicking over him curiously. So? She ventured, voice quiet but calm. Are you all right with this arrangement? Carly told me you weren't thrilled about being offline. He let out a dry laugh. Let's call it a forced detox. Then he softened slightly. I guess we'll survive. She breathed a small sigh of relief, as if she'd expected a harsher reply. If you need anything, just ask. I'm still learning this place, too. Aaron nodded, turning to gaze out the window. Beyond the glass, orchard trees stood in neat rows, their leaves rustling in the breeze. Yeah, he said finally. Thanks. In that moment, the tension in his chest loosened by a fraction. Something about the orchard's gentle hush, plus the tentative kindness in Adeline's eyes, made him think maybe he could endure this month. Maybe he'd even find something worth staying for. The next morning dawned under a sky streaked with soft grays, hinting at an early drizzle. Aaron woke to the muted sound of chirping birds and realized he wasn't in his plush London penthouse. No traffic hum, no city lights bleeding through curtains, just orchard air and rustic stillness. It felt both unsettling and strangely refreshing. Descending the old wooden staircase, he glimpsed Adeline in the living room, rummaging through a stack of books on a dusty shelf. She wore a warm cardigan over a simple blouse and jeans, hair loosely tied in a messy bun. The entire scene exuded casual coziness, a world apart from the edgy, upscale vibe he was used to. She glanced up. Morning, she greeted softly. He answered with a nod, not entirely awake. Morning. He half expected her to have coffee ready like a personal assistant, but realized that wasn't her role. The thought made him swallow a note of frustration. He wasn't sure how to handle a companion who wasn't subservient. Still, his stomach rumbled. Got breakfast plans? He ventured. She offered a faint smile. We have eggs, some bread, and apples. We could do a quick scramble, unless you want cereal. Carly left a box of plain cornflakes somewhere. Aaron grimaced at the mention of cereal, but shrugged. Eggs sound fine. Soon they were in the kitchen, orchestrating a simple meal. Adeline cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking them methodically. Aaron sliced apples with the only halfway decent knife he could find, tossing them into a pan with a bit of butter. Their movements were a bit awkward, like two dancers who hadn't learned each other's steps yet, but they managed. While Adeline poured the beaten eggs into the skillet, Aaron eyed the old cast-iron stove. This place is ancient, he muttered, adjusting the heat. You sure it won't blow up on us? She let out a gentle laugh. It's old but sturdy, trust me. Then her voice softened. Feels weird, right? Living with someone you barely know. He glanced at her face, noticing a flicker of self-consciousness in her eyes. Yeah, it does. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But maybe that's the whole point, try something different from the usual chaos. She smiled a little, stirring the eggs. Exactly. When they finally sat to eat at a small wooden table near the window, a soft drizzle began tapping the glass. Adeline watched the raindrops for a moment before turning her attention back to him. So, what do you normally do on a morning like this? Check emails? Rush to a meeting? He snorted. Typically, yes. My schedule's always insane. But here, no signal, no pressing calls. He took a forkful of eggs, savoring the fresh, buttery taste. I guess I should see the orchard. Carly said something about a storage shed, a horse stable. There's a lot I haven't looked at. She nodded, nibbling on a slice of apple. I can show you around if you want. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to explore solo. Another part recognized that she knew more about the house already. Sure, he agreed finally. After breakfast. A short while later, they ventured outside, braving the light drizzle. Adeline pulled on a hooded jacket, while Aaron wore a simple windbreaker. Gravel crunched beneath their feet as they walked past the orchard's edge, where apples, some green, some red, dangled from damp branches. The air smelled fresh, tinged with earth and rain. She led him toward a weathered wooden structure. This used to be a small stable, apparently, she explained, resting a hand on the old door. Now it's just storage for tools. Inside, they found an assortment of gardening equipment, a rusted wheelbarrow, a battered shovel. Dust motes swirled in the beams of watery light that filtered through cracks in the walls. Aaron frowned, picking up a heavy axe leaning against the corner. Carly never told me I'd have to chop my own firewood. Adeline offered a sympathetic shrug. It's how they heat the living room. We do have a small electric heater for the bedrooms, but the fireplace is cozier, especially at night. His jaw clenched. Fantastic, he said flatly, setting the axe aside. Guess that's next on my list of new experiences. They walked further along the property, crossing a narrow path that meandered around the orchard. The drizzle intensified momentarily, spattering them with fine droplets. Adeline didn't seem to mind, pointing out a cluster of pear trees that looked half wild. Then they passed a tangle of orange and lemon shrubs, clearly an experimental patch. Aaron paused, breath escaping in a low whistle. I have to admit, he said, it's beautiful here. He scanned the rolling hills, the orchard rows, and the lake shimmering in the distance, ringed by reeds. I'm used to skyscrapers and glass buildings. This is a different world. Peaceful, she repeated softly, stepping closer. Sometimes that's what people need. A slight flush warmed his cheeks. He shifted his stance, not quite sure how to respond. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket, miraculously picking up a tiny signal. He pulled it out, frowned at the single bar. Excuse me, he muttered, stepping aside to see if he could load any messages. The screen stubbornly refused. Adeline watched him with a hint of amusement in her gaze. It's no use, she teased gently. I've tried all sorts of angles. Unless you climb a tree, you won't get enough data to even check your emails. He shot her a half-smile that bordered on exasperated. I might just do that, he said, though a hint of humor glimmered in his eyes. Still can't believe Carly dropped me in the middle of nowhere. They trudged back toward the house, drizzle ebbing to a faint mist. By the time they reached the porch, Aaron's hair was damp, droplets tracing the line of his jaw. Adeline paused at the threshold, noticing how the tension in his posture had eased during their walk. You okay? She asked quietly. He glanced at her, then gave a half shrug. I guess. If we're stuck here, might as well try to relax. A self-conscious chuckle slipped out. Who knows? Maybe I'll get used to the quiet. She nodded, a gentle smile tugging her lips. Right. We have a whole month. As they stepped inside, the musty warmth of the living room greeted them. Aaron unzipped his windbreaker, eyes flicking around the space as if newly appreciative. So, he said, why don't we check if that fireplace works? The damp is making the house chilly. Sure, but that means you'll need to gather some wood from the pile in back, Adeline responded, glancing at him, almost playful. He rolled his eyes dramatically, but headed for the back door. Fine, he muttered in mock surrender. Lead the way, Miss Rustic. She laughed under her breath, following him. Their footfalls echoed on the floorboards, and though they bickered lightly, an unspoken camaraderie was forming. Despite the drizzle, despite the orchard's isolation, something felt more natural between them, like two strangers forging a fragile truce in a land far removed from their comfort zones. Adeline stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, glancing at the single text that managed to come through from Carly. Hang in there. Let me know if you need anything. Carly. She exhaled, setting it aside. She could almost picture Carly's confident grin, convinced that throwing these two strangers into Orchard Lake House for a month would magically solve everything. Adeline wasn't so sure, but she couldn't deny that Aaron had at least tried to be civil so far, barring a few snarky remarks. At that thought, footsteps pounded outside, followed by a muted curse. The back door creaked open, revealing Aaron hauling a small stack of logs, his sleeves rolled up. A faint sheen of sweat clung to his brow. Here, he grunted. Enough for tonight, I hope. She hid a smile, recalling how earlier he'd complained the logs were too damp, too heavy, or too knotted with thick bark. Adeline opened a cabinet and pulled out some kindling she'd gathered. Set them by the fireplace and we'll start a fire in a bit, she said. Good job. He let out a short laugh. Don't patronize me. I grew up in the city, but I'm not helpless. Dropping the logs near the hearth, he brushed sawdust from his forearms. Adeline noticed the rip in his shirt near the shoulder. "What happened there?" she asked. He rolled his eyes. "This old shirt snagged on the woodshed door. Just my luck." "Could be worse," she teased. "At least you didn't chop your foot off." "Ha ha," he retorted, but his lips twitched in a near smile. She stepped toward him, crossing the living room. "Look, I can mend that if you want," she offered, pointing at the tear. "I'm not an expert seamstress, but I have a needle and thread somewhere." He hesitated. "I can deal with it." "Suit yourself," she said, raising her hands in surrender. Then, after a pause, she added more gently, "Actually, let me help. It's the least I can do." He shrugged, allowing it. She fetched her small sewing kit from the kitchen drawer. They moved to the couch, where he took off the damaged shirt, leaving him in a plain undershirt. She carefully threaded the needle, focusing on each stitch as she drew the edges together. He watched her fingers. Noting how steady they were, maybe from all that gardening, he mused. "You're not half bad at this," he said, voice lower than usual. A tiny smile curved her lips. "Thanks. I used to fix up my own clothes in college. Couldn't afford new ones every time they got torn." She finished the final stitch, knotted the thread, and handed him the shirt. "Done." He slipped it back on, rotating his shoulder to test it. "It's fine," he murmured. "Appreciate it." Adeline nodded, noticing the subtle shift in his tone, less defensive, more genuine. The tension that usually hung between them felt thinner, replaced by a quiet sense of cooperation. As if on cue, her stomach rumbled. She raised her eyebrows. "Lunch soon?" He chuckled softly. "Why not? I assume I'm on cooking duty?" Her expression brightened with playful relief. "If you don't mind. The orchard walk took a chunk of time, and I'm starving." In the kitchen, they struck a small compromise. She'd handle prepping vegetables. He'd manage the stovetop. She handed him a recipe card she'd scribbled for a basic apple andonian pork sauté. Carly had left some pork chops in the fridge. Aaron frowned at it, brow furrowed. "I'm more used to ordering takeout, but okay, let's do it." He heated a pan with oil, browning the onions while Adeline sliced apples. Steam rose, carrying the tang of simmering ingredients. The domesticity of the moment felt strangely comforting. They bantered quietly. "Don't burn the onions. They need to be translucent." "All right, Miss Gordon Ramsay. Just being helpful." Their conversation flowed more freely than before. Adeline dared to joke about Aaron's city boy ways, and he teased her about orchard life. By the time the dish was done, both were hungry enough to ignore any clumsy mistakes. They set the table again in that small dining nook, the drizzle outside replaced by faint sunlight. Apple branches swayed gently outside the window, dappled light dancing across the worn tabletop. Aaron took a bite of the pork, eyes widening. "Not bad," he mumbled through a mouthful. She let out a quiet laugh. "It's edible, at least. Good job." They ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't an awkward one. Each seemed content to savor the food, soaking in the unexpected warmth of this moment. When they finished, she collected the plates and he insisted on washing them. She raised no objection. Teamwork, she realized, was simpler than she'd expected with him. After cleaning up, they found themselves back in the living room. Aaron stared at the logs stacked beside the fireplace. "Should probably get this fire going," he said, picking up a couple of small pieces of wood for kindling. "That was the deal, right? I do the grunt work, you cook." Adeline sank into one of the armchairs, folding her legs beneath her. "We can switch it up tomorrow. I don't mind chopping wood occasionally." He smirked. "We'll see." Then he crouched near the hearth, arranging the kindling. "Any tips on lighting this thing?" She walked over, gently adding a bit of balled-up newspaper beneath. "Use this first, then set the smaller bits on top. Once it catches, add the bigger logs." Their hands brushed as she passed him the matches, a small spark of awareness dancing between them. Moments later, the flame crackled to life, licking at the dry wood. Aaron stood, dusting off his palms, while Adeline fed one more piece of kindling to strengthen the fire. Warmth spread through the room, replacing the day's chill. "Cozy," she remarked, stepping back. They both watched the flames for a spell, enthralled by the simple, hypnotic dance of light and shadow along the stone. Aaron eventually cleared his throat. "I guess it's not all terrible doing stuff ourselves," he admitted, voice low. "Reminds me of, I don't know, simpler living, maybe. I've never tried it, but sometimes simple is good." Adeline finished gently. He nodded, gaze flicking her way. She sensed a flicker of vulnerability, a man unaccustomed to letting down his guard. In that quiet moment, her heart pounded with the realization that maybe, just maybe, they were starting to bridge the gap between them. Then Aaron stretched, yawning. "Man, I feel tired after all that wood chopping. Must be the country air. Or maybe city folks aren't as tough as they look," she teased. He let out an exasperated snort, but it lacked true bite. "Careful, Miss Moore," he said, eyes crinkling with faint amusement. "I might just go chop more wood to prove you wrong." She laughed softly, stepping away from the hearth. "Go ahead. Just don't tear another shirt." He pretended to scowl, though she caught the ghost of a grin. "You never let me off easy, do you?" "I don't plan to," she said, folding her arms with playful resolve. As the fire crackled behind them, the tension that once hovered felt thinner than ever. They still had a long way to go. Adeline felt her own guardedness, her own fear of Lynn, like a coiled serpent within. But for now, they found a small measure of harmony in the laughter and the warmth, forging a fragile partnership inside the old orchard house. 2 days after Aaron's arrival, the morning sky broke clear and bright, a welcome shift from the damp drizzle. Sunlight cascaded through the orchard, painting the grass in vivid greens and highlighting the glossy apples still clinging to their branches. Inside the house, Adeline flipped through a short grocery list, chewing her lip in concentration. They were running low on fresh veggies, and she wanted to buy some protective gear for Aaron, who kept complaining about ruined clothes from wood chopping. She found him in the hallway, fiddling with his phone near a window. He glanced up, frustration etched on his face. "Still no real signal," he muttered. "Guess my emails can wait." Adeline approached carefully. "Hey, I was thinking there's a small town in the valley. Maybe half an hour's drive we could pick up supplies." She raised the grocery list. "And maybe you can buy sturdy pants or gloves or something." He arched an eyebrow. "You sure there's a store that sells men's workwear out here in the boonies?" She smiled. "I've only been once, but it's got a few general shops. Could be worth a look, right? And you might get better reception there." His expression softened, a flicker of relief crossing his features. "All right, let's do it." Soon, they were in the sedan, bumping down the gravel lane, orchard trees giving way to rolling fields. The day felt unexpectedly pleasant, light breeze, warm sunshine, and the faint scent of grass. Aaron gripped the wheel, scanning the quiet countryside. "Feels weird not seeing billboards or skyscrapers," he admitted. Adeline nodded, glancing out the passenger window. "It's refreshing, though. You can breathe here, you know." He cast her a sidelong look. "Yeah, I guess so." By the time they reached the village Hartford Vale, read a wooden sign, the roads were lined with old brick buildings, flower boxes, and a few cars parked along curbs. It reminded Aaron of a postcard from simpler times: stone church tower, local bakery, people strolling with dogs, greeting each other by name. They parked near a general store. Adeline hopped out, inhaling the aroma of fresh bread wafting from the bakery next door. That smells amazing." Aaron nodded, phone in hand, noticing he had 2 signal bars. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. "I need to check my messages." She waved him off. "Go ahead. I'll see if they have the groceries I need." Inside the general store, Adeline scanned the modest aisles. Canned goods, fresh produce from nearby farms, a small corner for household tools, and, to her delight, some sturdy apparel for farm or orchard work. She selected carrots, onions, tomatoes, and a bag of flour. Then she found a pair of heavy-duty gloves and protective denim for Aaron, guessing at his size. She stacked everything in a little wire basket, heart fluttering with satisfaction at how easy it was to manage daily tasks here. When she turned, Aaron appeared, phone tucked away. "Business meltdown averted?" she teased. He half smiled, rubbing the back of his neck. Couple of urgent emails, but I told them I'd handle it tonight. The world won't end if I'm offline a bit longer. Good. She pointed to the gloves. Try these, might save your shirts from further tragedy. He chuckled, slipping the gloves on. Not bad. Then he held out the denim pants. And these, you guessed my size? She shrugged, cheeks warming. Roughly. If they don't fit, we can exchange them, I guess. He studied her face, a playful glint in his gaze. You've been checking me out, huh? She tossed him a narrowed look, but couldn't stifle a grin. Shut up, Winston. Their banter felt lighter, more natural than before. He paid for the items at the old-fashioned counter, where a friendly shopkeeper gave them a cheery wave. On their way out, Adeline paused by the bakery window, eyes drawn to fresh loaves. She hesitated. Should we get some bread? Absolutely, Aaron said, surprising her with his eagerness. Fresh bread sounds great. They stepped inside the bakery, greeted by the comforting warmth of ovens and the sweet note of pastries. A short queue led them to a display of golden brown loaves, croissants, and cinnamon rolls. Adeline's gaze flicked over everything in delight. She finally chose a crusty baguette and a small bag of buttery rolls. Outside again, arms loaded with groceries, they strolled back to the car under a bright sun. A mild wind stirred, rustling the leaves of a towering oak near the road. Adeline felt an odd sense of contentment. This day is turning out pretty nice, she remarked. No tension, no arguments, just normal. Aaron cleared his throat softly. Yeah, it's easy, isn't it? I can't remember the last time I took a simple drive to pick up groceries with someone. Usually I just order online or have an assistant handle it. She cast him a sidelong glance as they reached the car. Well, maybe you needed a break. Carly sure thought so. He sighed, placing the bags in the trunk. She has a knack for meddling, he said, but his tone held no anger. Then he turned, meeting Adeline's eyes. Thanks for, showing me how to slow down. Her cheeks warmed. It's not like I'm an expert, but I guess quiet living is something I've gotten used to. They slid into the car, but before Aaron could start the engine, Adeline touched his arm gently. Hey, we're not that far from the orchard, and it's a nice day. Want to take a short scenic route on the way back? I saw a sign for a viewpoint. He pursed his lips, hesitating only a moment. Sure, he said at last, as if surprising even himself. The next half hour, they wound through a back road, cresting a small hill that overlooked patchwork fields dotted with sheep and bordered by hedges. They parked at a tiny pull-off. Stepping out, they gazed across the panoramic view. Rolling hills, farmhouses in the distance, a winding river that sparkled like liquid silver. Wow, Aaron breathed. I'm not used to landscapes that aren't concrete. Adeline stood beside him, hugging her arms against a soft breeze. Me neither. In a way, I grew up in a different town. But I find places like this healing. She swallowed, a faint tremor fluttering inside her as she recalled the dark times that led her to seclude herself with flowers and farmland. Aaron caught the change in her expression. Everything okay? She nodded quickly. Yes, just memories. Then she shook it off, forcing a light smile. We should get back. Groceries will spoil. Reluctantly, he agreed. They climbed back into the car, heading down the winding route toward Orchard Lake House. The mood had shifted slightly still peaceful, but touched by the awareness of unspoken histories. Finally, pulling up the gravel drive, they parked near the front door. Adeline grabbed the groceries, Aaron the heavier items. The orchard cast long shadows across the lawn as the sun arced westward, painting the ancient stones of the house in warm gold. Inside, they began unpacking. Bread on the counter, produce in the pantry, gloves and denim set aside for Aaron. Adeline felt a gentle glow in her chest. The tension that once defined their every interaction had retreated, replaced by something akin to camaraderie. Aaron leaned against the kitchen table. Not so bad for day 4, huh? He quipped. She gave him a genuine grin. Not bad at all. Now let's see if you can handle dinner. He raised his hands in mock surrender. Hold on, I never said I was a world-class chef. But fine, I'll try. Maybe stew? Sounds perfect. She laid out some carrots and potatoes, laughing softly as he puffed up in feigned confidence. Just don't burn down the kitchen. His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Only if you promise not to poke fun at my slicing technique." She nodded, stepping closer to show him how to properly hold a knife for cutting vegetables. The closeness, the playful banter, it felt unexpectedly intimate, like they'd formed an easy routine. For the first time, Adeline let herself hope that maybe this month wouldn't be as difficult or lonely as she'd feared. Warm afternoon light slanted through the tall orchard trees, their branches swaying gently in a cool breeze. Adeline and Aaron had just finished lunch and experimental vegetable stew that Aaron whipped up when a rumbling motor announced a visitor. Adeline glanced out the window, spotting an old green pickup pulling into the gravel driveway. A middle-aged man stepped out, removing a worn cap from his salt and pepper hair. Adeline traded a quick, curious look with Aaron. "I think that's David Franklin," she said quietly. "He owns Orchard Lake House." They stepped out onto the porch just as the man approached. He looked sturdy, with kind eyes, and wore practical farm clothes dusted with bits of hay. Behind him, a compact horse trailer stood hitched to the pickup. "Afternoon," he greeted, tipping his cap. "David Franklin. Guess Carly Donovan didn't mention I'd drop by this soon." Aaron folded his arms, ever wary, while Adeline offered a small smile. "I'm Adeline Moore. This is Aaron Winston. Nice to meet you." David nodded politely. "Carly arranged for 2 horses paid the deposit. She insisted it'd be part of your, countryside experience." Aaron's eyebrows shot up. "Horses? She never told me that." He let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "I definitely didn't request them." A hint of sheepishness graced David's face. "Sorry for the surprise, but Miss Donovan can be persuasive. Figured you folks could use them. This here's Brownie." He tapped the side of the trailer, then added, "And the other is Sky." Adeline's eyes shone, excitement creeping in. She'd ridden horses years ago, and while she was out of practice, the memory warmed her. "Really? That's wonderful," she murmured, then paused, noticing Aaron's displeased expression. Aaron huffed. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with a horse. I'm no jockey." David cleared his throat. "They're gentle, well-trained. No pressure if you don't ride them, but I'll be by every few days to check on them." A moment of tense silence hung in the orchard's golden glow. Adeline watched Aaron's knuckles tighten at his sides. He clearly disliked decisions thrust upon him. Yet she also saw flickers of curiosity behind his annoyance. Finally, he exhaled. "All right, but if Carly's trying to force me into horseback riding, I can't promise I'll love it." "Understood," David said, opening the trailer. The first horse, Brownie, stepped out, a sweet-looking chestnut mare with soft eyes. Sky followed a taller, pale gray horse with a black mane. They shuffled on the gravel, nostrils flaring. Adeline moved closer, hands out gently. "Hey, girl," she whispered to Brownie, who sniffed her palm. Warmth filled Adeline's chest. She remembered that reassuring horsey scent from her younger days. David gave a quick overview of feed and tack. "You can use the old stable near the orchard shed. I'll leave some hay and basic gear. If you need help, call me." Meanwhile, Aaron stayed a few paces back, arms crossed. The powerful animals seemed to unnerve him. "They're bigger than I expected," he muttered. Adeline tried not to laugh. "They won't bite unless provoked. You'll be fine." David doled out instructions before finally tipping his cap again and climbing back into his pickup. The engine rumbled away, leaving Brownie and Sky tethered by the makeshift stable. Aaron ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "Guess we really are stuck with them." Adeline placed a gentle hand on his forearm. "I promise we can go slow. Besides, it might be fun, and if not, at least they're pretty to look at." He cracked a reluctant smile at that. "Right. I'll try not to panic." Adeline glanced at the horses, her excitement growing. She couldn't help but feel a sense of possibility in the air, like adding these creatures might unlock a new dimension to their orchard stay. Yet she also noticed Aaron's guarded stance, suspecting that Carly's surprise might stir deeper tensions soon enough. That evening, Adeline led Aaron around the orchard shed, where David had dropped off saddles and basic tack. The sun dipped low, casting the orchard in coppery hues. Brownie and Sky grazed calmly in a small fenced enclosure, flicking their tails at occasional gnats. Adeline lifted a bridle. "So this part goes over the horse's head, and you slip the bit gently between their teeth," she explained, her tone patient. Aaron stood beside her, brow furrowed. "That looks complicated," she chuckled. "You get used to it." She nodded toward Brownie, the gentler mare. "If you want, I can show you how to lead her around first. You don't have to ride if you don't feel comfortable yet." Aaron pursed his lips, shifting from foot to foot. "All right, sure, but no promises I won't make a fool of myself." Guiding him step by step, Adeline demonstrated how to slip the bridle on. Brownie tossed her head at first, but soon settled under Adeline's soothing voice. Aaron stood close, hands uncertain but determined. Slowly, he placed his palm on Brownie's neck, feeling the warm coat, the steady breath. "Good girl," Adeline murmured, handing the reins to him. "Now walk her gently." Aaron exhaled, taking a cautious step. Brownie followed, calm as ever. A faint grin tugged at his mouth. "This isn't too bad," he admitted. She watched him, heart flickering with a surge of warmth. Over the past days, she'd seen glimpses of a gentler side beneath Aaron's tough exterior. Here, leading a horse in the golden twilight, he seemed almost vulnerable. The orchard stretched around them like a peaceful haven. No city noise, no phone calls, just the soft rustle of leaves. They spent nearly an hour teaching him basic handling. By the end, the sky had turned dusky pink, the horizon blending into lavender clouds. Brownie nickered softly, and Aaron patted her neck. "Thanks," he said to Adeline, stepping away from the horse, "for showing me how. I never thought I'd do this." She smiled. "You did great." They returned Brownie to the enclosure, where Skye stood watchful. Adeline felt an unexpected closeness with Aaron, a gentle current of understanding. She remembered their first meeting, how standoffish and impatient he'd been. Now, as they strolled back toward the house under a sky of dimming purples, he seemed more at ease. On the porch, the breeze carried hints of cooling air. Adeline paused, gazing across the orchard. "It's beautiful out here at night," she whispered, hugging her arms. Aaron moved closer. "It really is." He hesitated, as though considering a next step. The hush of dusk wrapped around them like a soft cloak. Then he dared to reach out, fingertips brushing hers. Her breath caught. Their eyes met. For a moment, the orchard and everything else faded. Warmth pulsed between them, a delicate tension that felt electric. Adeline's heart thudded. She wondered if he'd lean in and kiss her. His voice emerged low. "We should head inside?" She swallowed, stepping back to reclaim composure. "Yeah, sure." Inside, they found themselves in the living room. A mild chill urged them to light the fireplace again, and they settled on the worn couch. The flames crackled softly. Adeline tucked her legs beneath her, heart still fluttering from that near-intimate porch moment. Aaron turned slightly toward her. "Earlier, with Brownie, that was actually fun," he admitted, voice quiet. "Thanks for pushing me outside my comfort zone." "You're welcome," she murmured. She could see the faint glow of curiosity in his eyes, something that hinted at deeper feelings. Slowly, she shifted closer, drawn by the warmth of his presence. His gaze flicked to her lips, then away, as though testing the waters. A nervous flutter danced in her stomach. She wanted to close that distance, to see if the spark that flared in the orchard was real. Yet part of her remained cautious. She still wrestled with the fear of letting Lynn, her darker side, slip out at the wrong time. Still, the silence felt charged. "Aaron," she whispered, half smiling. He leaned in, the scent of fresh air and faint cologne trailing him. His palm brushed her cheek. "Adeline?" Their lips were a mere breath apart when she swallowed, heart pounding. A wave of uncertainty rushed through her, and she pulled back, pulse racing. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I just need a moment." He nodded, disappointment flickering in his gaze, but he didn't push. "It's okay," he managed, letting his hand drop. Adeline exhaled shakily, hugging herself. We should take it slow, that's all." He offered a small nod, expression understanding but tinged with longing. "All right, slow." They remained on the couch for a bit, conversation tapering off. Outside, the orchard night sang with gentle insects. Beneath the hum of stillness, a tender ache quivered between them, a desire neither quite dared to fulfill. Not yet. Days passed in a steady rhythm. Aaron continued learning to groom the horses, even took a brief walk atop Brownie, much to Adeline's delight. Meanwhile, they managed orchard chores together, cooking modest dinners at twilight. A subtle closeness formed, built on mutual respect and growing attraction. On the fifth night after David delivered the horses, Adeline found herself restless. The orchard's moonlit glow beckoned her outside. She'd finished a chapter of a gardening manual and realized Aaron hadn't come inside yet. Curiosity spurred her to peek out the window. He was at the side of the house near the woodpile, splitting a few more logs by the faint light of a lantern. He'd shed his shirt probably to avoid sweating through it, and the yellow glow highlighted the flex of his arms, each swing of the axe revealing toned muscles. Something sparked hot in Adeline's chest. She pressed a hand to the doorframe, heart thudding. Why is this affecting me so strongly? She wondered. She'd found him attractive before, but tonight, under the hush of the orchard's moonlit sky, desire sparked like flint on steel. And along with it, she felt Lynn stir in the depths of her mind a low rumble of raw, unfiltered appetite. She swallowed, stepping out into the night. The sweet scent of apples mingled with a cool breeze. Aaron didn't notice her approach at first, engrossed in the steady thunk of the axe. Then he caught her silhouette and paused, chest heaving from exertion. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly, lowering the axe. Adeline's pulse hammered. She took a slow step closer, eyes traveling across his broad shoulders. "No," she whispered, voice tight. I saw you." He offered a tentative half-smile. "Yeah, I wanted to finish splitting enough wood for tomorrow." Her gaze roamed over him, heat blossoming in her core. A swirl of emotion rattled her composure, longing, curiosity, but also an edge of something more urgent, more primal. She inhaled sharply, then closed the distance and reached a hand to touch his forearm. "You work too hard," she teased, but her tone trembled. Aaron's eyes flicked to hers, and in that instant an unmistakable tension flared, electric and undeniable. The orchard's hush grew thick around them. Carefully, he set the axe aside, turning fully to face her. She could see his pulse beating fast at the base of his throat. "Adeline," he murmured, the word charged with unspoken invitation. She didn't wait this time. She leaned in, pressing her lips to his with a sudden hungry heat. It was as if the weeks of gentle flirting combusted in one fierce kiss. He let out a soft, surprised sound, then wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. Their mouths moved in desperate urgency, hands grappling for contact. Adeline's nails grazed his back, and she felt a flash of something wild stirring inside Lynn. A surge of intense passion mingled with a flash of aggression. She bit at his lower lip, not enough to wound, but enough to make him gasp. He pulled back an inch, breath ragged. "Whoa, that's new," he panted, eyes wide. Adeline shuddered, a mixture of thrill and alarm coursing through her veins. But the hunger wouldn't recede. She pressed in again, claiming his mouth in a deeper kiss, her body pinned to his, hearts pounding in unison. Lynn roared in the back of her mind, fueling each frantic heartbeat. The orchard around them seemed to vanish, replaced by the raw, urgent friction of two bodies colliding. Aaron responded with matching fervor, his own pent-up desire unleashed. They stumbled against the woodpile, half laughing, half gasping. But as the heat escalated, so did the darkness swirling within Adeline. She heard a voice in her mind whisper, "Take more." Her grip on his shoulders became bruising. She dragged her nails across his skin harder than she intended. He hissed in pain, but adrenaline overshadowed it. They stumbled toward the side of the house, entangled in a frenzy of kisses and half-formed words. She felt the thrill of his hands on her waist, the rasp of his breathing on her ear. But then, as the wildness peaked, she let out a low growl. Her palm slipped to his throat in a moment of reckless abandon, pressing just enough to startle him. Aaron froze, heart thudding. "Adeline," he managed, voice strained. She blinked, snapping out of the haze for a second. I'm sorry," she whispered, panic mixing with desire. But the apology faded as Lynn urged her on, a fierce jolt of primal electricity. She kissed him harder, her hand tangling in his hair. He groaned, half lost in the moment, half uneasy at her sudden aggression, yet he was too consumed to stop her. Their bodies slid to the ground in the orchard's soft grass, half hidden by the house's shadow. The intensity soared, her lips traveling his neck, teeth grazing his skin. He bit back a gasp, not sure if it was pain or pleasure. Then, in a flash of near violence, Adeline pinned him, her hand pressed at his shoulder, her nails digging in. For a split second, she felt an urge to squeeze, to mark him, and a flicker of alarmed clarity crossed her thoughts. "Stop!" part of her mind screamed. But Lynn howled, demanding more. Aaron's eyes flew open. "Adeline, hey!" A tremor of guilt and fear cut through her, and she yanked herself back. Panting, she stared at him, chest tight with shock. The orchard seemed to spin. She'd almost let the darkness seize control. She struggled to find words, to explain or apologize. He sat up, equally breathless, brushing leaves from his bare skin. "What just happened?" he rasped, a mix of arousal and confusion. She pressed trembling fingers to her lips, tears threatening. I don't know," she whispered. "I got carried away." He reached for her, but she lurched to her feet, stumbling. "I can't, I need—" Her heart pounded like a caged animal. Without waiting for his response, she fled into the house, leaving him sprawled in the moonlit grass, pulse roaring in his ears. Sunlight crept through the windows of Orchard Lake House, gilding the wooden floors with gentle beams. Aaron woke on the living room couch, having dragged himself there sometime after midnight. His muscles ached from the frenzied encounter outside. A faint stinging marked where Adeline's nails had raked his skin. He rubbed his face, recalling the previous night with a swirl of conflicting emotions, intense pleasure, confusion, and a trace of fear. She'd pulled away so abruptly. Now the house felt hollow, no sign of her downstairs. Rising, he trod upstairs to her bedroom, knocking lightly on the door. "Adeline?" he called, voice low. No response. Testing the knob, he found it unlocked. The bed was rumpled but empty. His stomach knotted. Where was she? He wandered back down, scanning the kitchen. The countertop was bare, no breakfast or coffee in sight. A flicker of annoyance bit at him. He was the one who'd ended up alone on the couch, and now she'd vanished? Suddenly, he spotted her curled on a small sofa in the side parlor, hugging a throw blanket. She looked exhausted, eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. "Adeline," he said softly, stepping closer. She flinched at his voice, but slowly looked up. I couldn't sleep," she mumbled. He eased onto a nearby chair, heart heavy with concern. "Hey," he ventured. "About last night, are you okay?" Her gaze dropped. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "I don't know what came over me." Aaron's mind flicked through memories of her raw, almost violent passion. He swallowed. "It was intense," he admitted. "I'm not saying I didn't want it, I did. But you seemed so different." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "That's not me," she said brokenly. "At least not the me I want to be. I got carried away and it scared me." He frowned, leaning forward. "Scared you how?" Her lips trembled. She weighed whether to confide in him, but fear knotted her throat. "Just I lost control. I hurt you, didn't I? Let me see." She reached out to graze the marks on his shoulder. He flinched, though not in pain but in emotional recoil. "It's fine," he insisted. "Just scratches." She shook her head, tears slipping free. "I feel horrible. I don't want you to think I'm some kind of monster." Aaron's frustration bubbled, though he tried to tamp it down. "You're not a monster," he said firmly. "I just wish I knew what was happening in your head." We were having a moment, and then... She hugged the blanket tighter, eyes shining with regret. "I can't explain right now," she said weakly, half-truth on her tongue. "I'm sorry." Silence stretched, the morning light gilding the dusty corners of the parlor. Finally, Aaron raked a hand through his hair, exhaling. "So that's it? You won't talk to me about it?" "I just can't," she murmured, voice small. "Please, give me space." He stood, anger flaring. "Space?" he echoed. "We're stuck in this house together. If you won't talk, how are we supposed to fix whatever this is?" She winced, turning her face away. "I'm sorry. she repeated, hollow. That's not an answer, he snapped, then caught himself, trying to stay calm. Adeline last night was intense, and I thought maybe it was good. I don't know. But if you regret it, tell me. Let me in. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears trailing her cheeks. I don't regret being close to you, she confessed, voice shaking. I regret the way I acted. I'm scared of myself, okay? Aaron's brow furrowed. That doesn't make sense, he said, frustration simmering. If you're not going to explain, I'm lost. I can't read your mind, Adeline. She stood abruptly, brushing past him. I need to be alone, she insisted, heading for the stairs. He pivoted, heart pounding with exasperation. So you're just shutting me out? She didn't answer, fleeing to the upper level. Within seconds, the door to the spare bedroom slammed. Aaron stood there, fists clenched at his sides, the echo of that slam reverberating through the quiet house. A swirling maelstrom of confusion and hurt took hold in his gut. Last night, the desire between them had been undeniable yet overshadowed by her sudden ferocity. And now she refused to share what truly haunted her. Uncertain how to proceed, he grabbed his jacket and stormed outside. The orchard greeted him with bright sunshine and chirping birds, a scene so peaceful it mocked his inner turmoil. Glaring up at the sky, he muttered, What is going on with her? Some part of him worried he'd frightened her or triggered some trauma. Another part bristled at being pushed away after he'd let his guard down. He decided to walk, hoping the orchard's paths might calm him. Each step along the grassy rows reminded him of how quickly everything could change. They'd been so close to bridging the gap, but now tensions ran high. Meanwhile, Adeline crouched on the bedroom floor, breath shaking as she tried to quell the storm inside her. A single thought throbbed in her head. I almost lost control again. She recalled the raw satisfaction that had coursed through her veins in that moment, how Lynn had awakened with a vengeance, urging her to push boundaries, to claim, to dominate. A surge of shame twisted her chest. She remembered the old fear, the reason she lived in near isolation, the haunting memory of nearly drowning a friend in a fit of rage. I'm not that person, she murmured through tears. Yet the truth glared back, whispering that maybe she hadn't buried Lynn as deeply as she'd hoped. Downstairs, the fireplace remained cold, breakfast uneaten, the orchard beyond bright and gentle. But inside the house, tension coiled, poised to unravel their fragile connection. Morning light sifted through the orchard's leafy canopy, sending shifting sunbeams across the grass. Aaron Winston lingered on the porch of Orchard Lake House, arms draped along the wooden railing. He'd awakened to find a note from Adeline, scrawled in trembling handwriting. I need to go riding for a while, clear my head. Let's talk later. The note did nothing to soothe his restlessness. He'd barely slept after their heated fight, replaying her tormented expression over and over. His frustration warred with concern. He hated being shut out, but he sensed she carried a heavier burden than he could guess. He decided not to wait around. With a faint grimace, he grabbed the gloves Adeline had bought him and walked around to the paddock. There, he found Brownie and Sky standing lazily in the mild sun. He spotted Adeline in the distance, astride Sky, guiding the mare along a narrow orchard path. Her posture looked rigid, as if tension coiled through every muscle. Aaron retrieved Brownie's bridle and carefully saddled her. The horse snorted at his clumsy approach, but he kept his voice calm. Easy, girl. We've done this before. Once mounted, he nudged Brownie into a gentle walk, following Adeline's distant figure through the orchard. The air smelled sweet with ripening fruit, though a hint of dampness lingered from last night's dew. As he neared, he spotted Adeline paused beneath an old apple tree, brushing a hand along Sky's neck. She glanced up, hearing the sound of hooves on grass. Her expression was guarded, her eyes still tinged with regret. Didn't expect you to ride out here, she murmured, reining Sky aside so he could approach. I didn't want to keep waiting, Aaron said tersely, though his tone softened at her wary look. We need to talk, preferably without you bolting. Her lips twisted in a rueful half-smile. I'm not running away, she said quietly, stroking Sky's mane. I just needed some air. He studied the orchard around them, the calm rows of trees, the golden sunlight. Everything felt too peaceful for the turmoil roiling in his chest. Why won't you tell me what's going on inside your head? One minute well, he trailed off, referencing the night they almost lost themselves in wild passion. Then you act like I'm the enemy. She swallowed, eyes flicking away. You're not, she said hoarsely. I'm the enemy to myself. A thick silence hung between them, punctuated by the horse's soft snorts. Brownie shuffled under Aaron's weight, impatient with standing still. Finally, Adeline gathered a shaky breath. Let's keep riding, she said. I'll try to explain. They urged the horses forward along a narrow path flanked by apple trees. Birds darted overhead, singing a morning chorus. For a time, they rode quietly, side by side. Then Adeline, her hands stiff on the reins, began to speak in a tight, measured voice. I wasn't always this cautious. In high school, I was rebellious, filled with anger I couldn't articulate. She paused, choosing her words. I had a friend named Belinda. We got into a terrible fight one summer, and I lost it. Aaron's gaze flicked toward her. Lost it how? He asked gently. Adeline exhaled, her breath quivering. We were by a lake near our school. She'd taunted me, I'd taunted her. It escalated to a brawl, and at some point I pushed her under the water. Her voice broke. I might have drowned her if two others hadn't intervened. A chill ran down Aaron's spine, though he tried not to show alarm. You nearly killed her? She nodded jerkily, tears edging her lashes. Yeah, I was so angry. This darkness took over. My parents freaked out. Belinda pressed charges at first, but eventually it was dropped to a lesser offense after I did anger management. Still, everyone treated me like a monster. And maybe they were right. Aaron swallowed, wrestling shock and empathy in equal measure. But that was how many years ago? 7, she whispered, and I promised myself never to get that angry again. I even named that side of me Lynn. It felt like another person who craved violence, who got off on rough fights or other extremes. Her cheeks flushed. I worked so hard to lock Lynn away. They approached a clearing where the orchard opened up onto a gentle slope, revealing a distant view of farmland. The horses slowed as if sensing the tension. Adeline trembled slightly, refusing to meet Aaron's eyes. Last night, when we were together, I felt that side again like I wanted to hurt you, mark you. It terrified me. A soft breeze ruffled Aaron's hair. He reined Brownie to a halt, turning to face her. So that's why you pushed me away. She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. I can't let Lynn out. I can't risk harming someone who matters. Something in her voice twisted his heart. He urged Brownie closer, gently placing a hand over Adeline's on the reins. You're not that same person, he said, voice low but firm. You've grown, and I'm not drowning in any lakes here. She laughed through tears, a choked, rueful sound. You say that now, but last night proves I'm capable of losing it. He caught her gaze, searching those haunted hazel eyes. So that's your big secret, huh? That you're passionate enough to get rough? Adeline, I'm not saying it didn't shock me, but you didn't actually hurt me. Just startled me. She shuddered. I was close to crossing a line, and if I do, how do we come back from that? He hesitated, wanting to reassure her, but unsure how. Look, if you trust me, we'll figure it out. I'm not fragile, and you're not evil. He paused, remembering his own messy past wild parties, run-ins with the law, though never as severe as her incident. Besides, I've done stuff I regret. Doesn't define me. Adeline's lips trembled, and she squeezed his hand like a lifeline. You don't hate me? She whispered. A swirl of compassion and tenderness warmed him. No, he said simply. If anything, I hate that you've carried this alone. Let me help shoulder it. She let out a shaky breath, tears sliding free. Then, in a burst of raw relief, she leaned from the saddle, pressing her forehead against his shoulder. He carefully touched her hair, the horses shifting but staying calm. For a long moment, the orchard around them felt like a world suspended in mercy. Thank you, she managed at last, voice muffled. Aaron swallowed the lump in his throat. No more secrets, he said softly. We can't move forward with them. She nodded, and with that quiet promise they urged the horses back toward the house, uncertain yet strangely hopeful. That afternoon, clouds gathered overhead, a hush settling over Orchard Lake House as if the world paused, waiting. Inside, Adeline and Aaron huddled around the living room's big stone fireplace, though they hadn't lit it yet. A light drizzle began tapping the roof, echoing the tension in the air. Adeline sighed, hands twisting in her lap. "I feel better telling you everything," she confessed. "But I'm still terrified. I don't want to lash out again." Aaron nodded slowly. "I get it. You're afraid that side Lynn will surface at the worst moment." He paused, recalling the intensity of her passion. "But maybe we can handle it. Together." She frowned, uncertainty etched on her face. "How?" He shifted, folding his arms as he thought it through. "We set rules," he said, voice firm. "If you sense Lynn stirring, you tell me. We try some steps to keep you grounded like breathing exercises or walking away if it's anger, or if it's physical desire, we ease into it more carefully." A faint blush crept up her cheeks. "So you're not against exploring the rough side of me if it's controlled?" He exhaled, a mixture of nerves and resolve. "Look, I can't lie. Part of it was—" he searched for the right word. "Exhilarating, but I won't let it hurt either of us. If we can channel it safely, why not?" She studied his face, tears threatening again. "I don't want to be judged." He placed a gentle hand on hers. "I'm not judging you. I care about you. We just have to be honest. If I see you going too far, I'll speak up. If you feel it, you warn me." Her shoulders sagged with relief and anxiety all at once. I can try, but I'm not used to letting that side out unless it breaks free on its own." Aaron nodded, voice softening. "We'll figure it out. That's what relationships are, navigating each other's edges." Adeline blinked at the word relationship, a tremor of shy happiness fluttering in her chest. "You're sure you want that? It's only been a couple of weeks. We still have so many differences." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "We do, but I've also never felt this drawn to someone before. You challenge me, Adeline, and I'm not the same controlling jerk who started this month. At least I hope not." She laughed quietly, teardrops clinging to her lashes. "You're still a bit controlling, but in a better way," she teased. He chuckled, threading their fingers together. "Truce?" "Truce," she agreed, a tentative smile lighting her face. The drizzle intensified outside, pattering the windows. Aaron rose and grabbed some firewood. Adeline arranged the logs, and together they sparked a slow-burning flame in the hearth. Warmth seeped through the room, echoing the sense of relief that their painful secret was finally in the open. Once the fire crackled, Adeline shifted closer on the couch. "I meant to ask," she ventured. "You said you had regrets too. About what?" He hesitated, swallowing. "College days, mostly. I got arrested once for hooking up in a public place, stupid, reckless. Plenty of women I treated like disposable flings." His voice grew taut. "I'm not proud of that pattern." She listened, empathy welling. "People can change," she said, echoing his own words to her. He nodded, meeting her gaze. "Exactly. So let's keep changing, yeah?" She let out a breath of acceptance, resting her head on his shoulder. The fire crackled, shadows dancing along the walls. In that moment, their pact felt like a fragile lifeline in agreement to face their demons, trusting they wouldn't devour each other in the process. Slowly, Aaron angled her chin up, and she let him kiss her soft, searching. No violence lurked, only tenderness, a promise that they'd handle the darkness together. She sank into that warmth, silently praying it would be enough. Sun rays fanned across Orchard Lake House the next morning, banishing the night's drizzle. Adeline emerged onto the porch with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to Aaron. His expression looked lighter than she'd ever seen, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "Ready for orchard duties, city boy?" she teased softly. He snorted, sipping coffee. "You bet. Which chore do you have in mind, picking apples or mucking the stable?" "Both," she said with mock gravity. "David said he'd pay a visit tomorrow, so we should tidy up for Brownie and Sky." Aaron gave a theatrical sigh, but followed her down the steps. Adeline felt a gentle excitement bloom in her chest. Since their heartfelt talk, she no longer felt the urge to hide every emotion. She'd told him about Lynn. He hadn't run. That alone filled her with cautious hope. They spent the morning gathering apples from the lower orchard. Aaron lugged a sturdy basket while Adeline picked the ripest fruit within arm's reach. Occasionally, she stood on tiptoe, and he'd laugh at her wobbling, stepping in to steady her. "These are heavier than I expected," he commented, dropping another apple into the basket. "Guess orchard life isn't all romantic strolls." She smirked. "Nope, lots of hauling. Don't even get me started on lugging sacks of feed for the horses." They bantered like that for an hour, filling 2 baskets with crisp, sun-warmed apples. The orchard's green leaves rustled overhead, letting shifting sunlight dapple the ground. Through it all, Adeline felt a sense of camaraderie she hadn't experienced in years, like they were building something, piece by piece. After lunch, they tackled the stable area. Adeline instructed him on mucking out old straw, laying down fresh bedding. Brownie and Sky watched them lazily from the enclosure, swishing tails. Aaron wiped sweat from his forehead, glancing at Brownie. "I can't believe I was so freaked out by these two. They're basically big puppies." Adeline's lips curved. "Told you. Just don't stand behind them or startle them." He rolled his eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Later, they rested on a low bench near the stable, sipping cold water. Adeline closed her eyes, relishing the orchard's gentle hush. "This is nice," she admitted. "A new routine, but I like it." Aaron stared at the horizon, where distant hills met the sky. "Never thought I'd say it, but yeah, it's grounding." His tone softened. "If you'd told me a month ago I'd enjoy shoveling straw, I'd call you insane." She laughed, scooting closer, their shoulders brushing. "Well, a lot can change in a month." His gaze dropped to her hand, and gently he linked their fingers. A comfortable silence wrapped around them, the orchard breeze still carrying the sweet hint of apples. For once, life felt almost normal, no urgent business calls, no hidden secrets. However, a small flutter of anxiety still rippled through Adeline. She occasionally sensed that flicker of Lynn stirring whenever Aaron brushed her waist or teased her in that playful, borderline suggestive way. But recalling their pact, she forced herself to breathe, to remain present. He, in turn, kept watchful if she tensed, ready to back off or check in. In the late afternoon, they tried a simple cooking project, making an apple pie from scratch. Adeline handled the dough while Aaron peeled apples and grumbled about the peeling taking forever. Flour dusted the countertop, the kitchen filled with their banter. "This had better taste amazing," Aaron joked, slicing yet another apple. "My wrists might never recover." Adeline grinned, rolling out the pastry. "Don't worry, I'll do all the dough rolling. You just keep peeling." When they finally slid the pie into the old oven, the house began to fill with a comforting aroma, warm sugar and cinnamon. Aaron inhaled, eyes brightening. "Now that's a smell I could get used to." Adeline lightly dusted flour off her hands. "Wait until you taste it." They ended up on the porch again while it baked, the sinking sun painting the orchard in a vibrant glow. Adeline felt a gentle breeze catch a strand of her hair, and Aaron brushed it aside, fingertips trailing along her cheek. A delicate tingle shivered through her, but Lynn stayed quiet, just the normal pulse of attraction, no dark surge of aggression. He read the relief in her eyes. "We're okay," he murmured, voice low. She nodded, leaning into his touch. "We are." 2 evenings later, clouds loomed dark and ominous over the orchard. Adeline had insisted they check on the far side of the property where an abandoned apple shed lay, ensuring no storm damage threatened the roof. Aaron reluctantly agreed, throwing on a light jacket. As they ventured deeper into the orchard, thunder rumbled. The wind picked up, sending branches into a restless dance. Adeline frowned at the sky. "We should hurry," she said. "That storm looks serious." Aaron nodded, but curiosity drove them to keep going. The old shed appeared battered, a few shingles missing. Adeline pointed to the roof. "Look, there's a gap. Rain'll leak in." He craned his neck. "We can't fix it tonight, but at least we know. Let's get back before—" A sudden crack of lightning tore across the sky, followed by a startling crash of thunder. Rain erupted, cold and pelting. They gasped as they dashed for the nearest shelter, a small, rickety hut once used for storing apple crates. They burst inside, soaked to the bone in seconds. The door banged behind them, water dripping from their hair. The cramped space smelled of damp wood and faint apple residue. Adeline shivered, hugging herself. Wow, that came fast. Aaron pushed wet hair from his forehead, adrenaline thrumming. Yeah, you okay? Fine, she stammered, teeth chattering slightly. The air felt chilly, and her soaked clothes clung to her skin. He glanced around, spotting a few old crates and an empty barrel. We'll have to wait this out, he said. No point trying to run in this downpour. Lightning flared outside, illuminating the hut in a harsh white glow. Adeline's heart pounded. She wasn't afraid of storms, but the sudden darkness and thunder set her nerves on edge. Aaron shrugged off his soaked jacket, draping it around her shoulders. Here, he murmured. It's not much, but you're shivering. She accepted it with a grateful nod. The space was too cramped for distance. They stood close, breath mingling in the gloom. Rain hammered on the roof, each crash of thunder rattling the flimsy walls. A flicker of light lightning again revealed the tension in Aaron's eyes. He reached for Adeline's hands, noticing how cold they felt. Better? He asked softly. She nodded, swallowing. Then a surge of warmth stirred in her chest. Despite the storm's fury, she felt strangely safe in his presence. Another thunderclap shook the hut, and she let out a nervous laugh. Hey, he teased gently. I got you. A fleeting tremor of desire shimmered through her, recalling how storms sometimes ignited adrenaline. She bit her lip, half expecting Lynn to stir, but all she felt was honest yearning. She curled her fingers around his. Aaron, thank you for everything. He leaned closer, brushing the hair from her face. Couldn't let you get struck by lightning now, could I? His soft joke cracked her tension. She smiled, stepping closer. The intimacy of the moment swelled with each flash of lightning outside. Gently, he tipped her chin up, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. Rain pounded overhead, thunder rumbling like a distant drum. But in the confined hush of the hut, they lost themselves in each other's warmth. This time, no violent surge of Lynn roared within her. She felt only the exquisite ache of closeness, the steady beat of Aaron's heart beneath her palms. He deepened the kiss, arms wrapping around her waist, their damp clothes pressed together, cold and clingy, but the heat between them outshone any discomfort. When he pulled away, breath ragged, she saw the question in his eyes. Are we safe to continue? She answered by sliding her hands along his shoulders, nodding. I'm here, she whispered, voice trembling with emotion rather than fear. He exhaled, relief flooding his face. Slowly they sank to a pair of overturned crates, still entwined, kisses growing softer, exploring the line between tenderness and passion without tipping into darkness. The storm raged outside, wind howling, rain lashing the roof, yet inside they found an unspoken calm like a refuge from every storm they carried within. Adeline's pulse thrummed with gratitude. This was intimacy without terror. She let herself cling to him, lips gentle on his, occasionally murmuring quiet reassurances. Time blurred, the storm's fury eventually easing to a steady drizzle. At last, they surfaced from that cocoon of shared warmth. She brushed her fingers over his cheek, noticing the calm in his eyes. See, he murmured softly. We can do this without losing ourselves. Her own gaze shone with unshed tears. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me. He pressed a final tender kiss to her forehead. We both needed to believe, me in you, and you in yourself. Outside, the thunder rolled farther away, and the rain tapered to a gentle patter. They stood, helping each other up, drenched and trembling, but full of a renewed sense of closeness. With quiet resolve, they slipped back into the orchard, heading home under dripping branches and lingering storm clouds. For the first time since she arrived at Orchard Lake House, Adeline felt that maybe, just maybe, she could embrace every part of herself, dark corners included, and still be worthy of love. A crisp morning sun washed over the orchard when David Franklin's truck rumbled into the driveway at Orchard Lake House. Adeline stood by the porch with Aaron, both wearing gentle, subdued smiles. After weeks of caring for Brownie and Sky, the day had arrived for David to take the horses back. David hopped out of the cab, tipping his worn cap. "Afternoon, you two. How's it been?" Aaron shrugged, hand resting lightly on Adeline's shoulder. "Better than I'd expected," he admitted with a half-smile. "They grew on me." Adeline laughed under her breath. "I think you grew on them, too." David opened the horse trailer and stepped over to the small paddock. Brownie nickered at him, while Skye pawed the ground, their ears flicking in mild curiosity. Adeline felt a pang in her chest over the past few weeks. She'd grown attached, especially to Brownie's sweet nature. "You're taking them home today?" she asked softly, stroking Brownie's muzzle. The mare pressed closer, as if sensing Adeline's mood. David nodded. "Yep. Didn't reckon you'd keep 'em forever, especially with the orchard lease about done." He glanced between Adeline and Aaron. "You two look different than when I first showed up. Happier, maybe." Aaron's lips quirked. "We figured a few things out." David chuckled, guiding Brownie to the trailer. "Well, good. Miss Donovan sure knew what she was doing." Adeline exchanged a glance with Aaron, remembering how Carly Donovan had orchestrated everything. They watched quietly as David led Brownie and Skye into the trailer. Brownie's tail swished, and Skye let out a faint whinny, a note of farewell. When David secured the trailer, Adeline took a moment to rub Brownie's flank one last time through the open side window. "Thank you, girl," she whispered, tears welling. "You helped me more than you'll ever know." Aaron slipped an arm around her waist, sensing her emotion. David started the truck, rolling forward with a wave. They stood in the orchard's dusty drive, watching until the trailer disappeared beyond the trees. A hush settled. Adeline swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm gonna miss them," she murmured. Aaron squeezed her gently. "Me too. Never thought I'd say that about horses, but yeah." She glanced around at the orchard. Hard to believe our month's almost over. Indeed, the gentle stir of leaves and sunlit apple branches reminded her that time had slipped by. Aaron pressed his lips together. Just a few days left, then back to the real world. Adeline exhaled, feeling a swirl of sadness and anticipation. "I know. You said you might have to travel for business again?" He nodded, frowning slightly. "Winton Softcom is launching a new platform. I'll have to be in London more." He hesitated, glancing toward her. "But let's not dwell on that yet. We still have some time here." She managed a smile, letting him guide her back to the house. The orchard felt momentarily emptier without the horses, yet she couldn't ignore the warmth blossoming between them, like the quiet promise that even if they left this place, they might carry its lessons forward. 3 days later, the morning sun rose on Adeline and Aaron loading suitcases into his sedan. Orchard Lake House, once bustling with their daily routines, chopping wood, feeding horses, cooking side by side, now stood silent. A slight chill colored the air, hinting that autumn edged near. Adeline cast a long look at the old stone walls, ivy creeping around the windows. Her throat felt tight. "We're really leaving," she whispered, tears threatening. Aaron shut the trunk gently, then turned to cup her cheek. "We are," he said quietly, "but this doesn't mean the end. We'll figure out what's next." She nodded, blinking back tears. Anxiety gnawed at her. What if you get back to your life in London and realize all this orchard living was just a novelty? He let out a soft snort. "You think I'd go back to clubs and one-night stands after all this?" He slid an arm around her waist, drawing her close. "I've changed, Adeline. I want more than that empty scene." She leaned her head on his shoulder, letting relief flicker through her. "I guess I'm still scared. A 2-hour drive between London and Sussex is nothing for a while. But what if we drift? I can't handle heartbreak again." His voice dropped to a reassuring murmur. "Then we won't drift. We'll make time for each other." He paused, searching her eyes. "And you trust me enough not to vanish on you?" She swallowed, recalling the moment she found out about his past flings. But he'd proven himself here, day after day. "I trust you," she said softly. They locked the house, leaving the key on the polished wooden table as Carly had instructed. One last look at the sunlit orchard, the heavy apples on the branches, the patch of grass where they'd practiced riding. Emotions tangled, both fond and bittersweet. Slipping into the car, Aaron started the engine. The sedan rolled down the gravel lane, dust kicking up behind. Adeline gazed out the window, watching Orchard Lake House fade like a dream. Soon they merged onto a rural road heading east. Conversation was scarce at first, an unspoken ache filled the quiet space between them. Eventually, Aaron cleared his throat. "Once we hit London, I'll check in at my flat, handle some urgent work stuff. Where will you stay tonight?" She fiddled with her seatbelt. "I could catch the late train to Sussex, go back to my cottage. It's been a month since I tended my greenhouse. My neighbor's been helping, but I should see it." He nodded, a muscle working in his jaw. "I'll take you to the station, if that's all right, or I can drive you straight home." Her heart warmed. "The train's fine. I need to ease into normal life. Don't want to take more of your time when you have your office waiting." He shot her a sidelong glance, one corner of his mouth curving. "I don't mind, but okay." They reached the outskirts of London by late afternoon, traffic picking up. The sudden bustle jarred Adeline after weeks of orchard stillness. Buildings soared, advertisements loomed, and her nerves twisted again. She caught Aaron's knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. "You okay?" she asked softly. He exhaled. "Yeah, just forgot how intense the city can be." A wave of relief and shared amusement passed between them. Both realized how profoundly the orchard retreat had changed their perspectives. At last, they arrived at a central train station. Aaron parked, then carried Adeline's suitcase inside. The swirl of commuters felt jarring, men in business suits, families rushing about, announcements echoing overhead. She turned to him, anxiety flickering across her face. "Will we still talk every day?" she asked. He set the suitcase down, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Of course. I'll call, text, maybe even show up unannounced if you're okay with it." A light laugh escaped her, and she buried her face in his shirt. "I'd like that," she whispered. When her train was announced, Aaron stroked her hair once more. "It's not goodbye," he reminded softly, pressing a careful kiss to her lips. "I'll see you in a few days at most." She clung to him, heart thudding. "I know. Be safe, okay?" He nodded, letting her slip away to board. Their gazes locked through the window as the train began rolling. She waved, tears in her eyes, a surge of longing in her chest. He lifted a hand in farewell, a determined set to his features. As the train carried her south toward Sussex, Adeline realized she was both terrified and excited. Terrified that the spell of Orchard Lake House might fade. Excited that despite everything they might forge a real connection beyond that haven. She closed her eyes, picturing his face, silently vowing she wouldn't let distance unravel the trust and closeness they'd built. Time slipped into a new rhythm over the following weeks. Adeline settled back in her quaint Sussex cottage, tending her flourishing lavender fields. Orders for her dried floral products picked up, and she busied herself shipping parcels nationwide. Yet every evening, she felt a pang of emptiness without Aaron in the next room. Still, their phones buzzed with messages, calls, even brief video chats. Aaron often teased her with photos from his office or late-night coding sessions at Winton Softcom. She'd send pictures of her latest flower hybrid or the greenhouse brimming with pale purple blooms. One Friday evening, the sound of a car engine startled her. She peeked out the window and caught a glimpse of Aaron's familiar sedan pulling up. A jolt of joy rocketed through her. She dashed out the front door to see him stepping onto her little gravel path, wearing a triumphant grin. "You said you were stuck at work," she exclaimed, heart pounding. He shrugged, hands in pockets. "Finished early. Couldn't wait another day." She almost flung herself into his arms. He laughed, spinning her around gently. The familiar spark lit her chest, but Lynn stayed quiet, just genuine love fueling her excitement. Over the next weeks, this became their pattern. She'd visit him in London, or he'd pop down to Sussex. They strolled in her lavender rose, sipped tea in her cozy kitchen, or spent weekends exploring the local market. Sometimes they'd argue he disliked how her cottage lacked certain modern comforts. She teased him for complaining whenever bugs flew in at night, but they always found a middle ground, echoing the orchard compromise. Lynn appeared once or twice, mostly in intimate moments when Adeline felt a surge of raw energy. But they'd learned how to channel it. Aaron would hold her gaze, remind her they were safe. That simple act of anchoring made all the difference. She discovered she could be bold, even a little rough, without tipping into violence. Aaron responded with equal passion, trusting her not to harm him. One Saturday afternoon, as they sprawled on a blanket amid Adeline's blooming lilies, he gently broached a topic that had been lingering. "Adeline, have you thought about us living closer?" She blinked, heart fluttering. "You mean moving in together?" He exhaled. "Maybe not right this second, but soon. I'm tired of the constant back and forth. I found a place on the outskirts of London, less hustle, more space. You could keep your farm here, but have an easier commute if you wanted to split time." Her mind whirled. "Aaron, that's huge. Are you sure?" He nodded, fingers trailing through her hair. "Yeah. I never thought I'd say it, but I want a calmer life, and I want it with you. This could be a step." Tears pricked her eyes. Wow, I need to think. But it sounds wonderful." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "No rush. Just know I'm serious." She breathed a quiet laugh, hugging him. "I believe you." And so, another door opened, one that hinted they might truly build a future together, orchard or no orchard, bridging their once-separate worlds. Late summer sunshine bathed Sussex in gentle warmth, the fields around Adeline's cottage bursting with lavender in full bloom. Aaron arrived that afternoon wearing casual clothes, soft jeans, and a plain shirt, ready to help her harvest a batch of fragrant stalks for an online order. They worked side by side, lavender bushes stretching like a purple sea. Bees buzzed around the blossoms, the air thick with the plant's calming scent. Adeline snipped each stalk carefully, placing them in a wicker basket. Aaron handed her rubber bands for bundling. When they finished, both stood amid the vibrant field, sweat beading their foreheads. "You know," Aaron said, voice soft with reflection, "I used to think my life was complete, just business success and short flings. But this," he gestured at the lavender, the open sky, "this is different. Real." Adeline's heart soared, her eyes shining. "I feel the same. I'd hidden here to keep my darkness from hurting anyone, but you're showing me I can live without fear." He set down the bundle of lavender, taking her hands gently. "Actually," he said, voice trembling, "I think I'm in love with you. I know I am." Her breath caught. The orchard house, all their shared memories flashed through her mind. She blinked tears from her lashes, a smile trembling on her lips. "Aaron Winston, I love you too," she whispered, voice choked with emotion. He let out a shaky laugh, pulling her close as the lavender field rustled in a gentle breeze. Their kiss felt like a promise sealed under the late afternoon sun. No orchard needed now, they carried its spirit in their hearts. Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled away, eyebrows raised. A quick glance told her it was Carly Donovan calling. Exchanging a grin with Aaron, she answered on speaker. Carly's bright voice echoed from the phone. "Adeline! How are you two lovebirds doing?" Adeline let out a pleased laugh. "We're good, Carly," she said, eyes locking with Aaron's. "Really good." "That's what I like to hear." A pause, then Carly's tone turned mischievous. "I've been busy, but I just wanted to confirm. You're both satisfied with my matchmaking services?" Aaron snorted softly. "You could say that. We owe you, Donovan." Carly chuckled. "Excellent. I'll consider my job done then. I love a success story." Adeline's heart brimmed with gratitude. "Thank you, Carly, truly," she said, recalling how everything started with an email from Hannah, then orchard living, horses, and a wild journey to self-acceptance. Carly wrapped up the call with a final warm farewell, promising she'd keep in touch and visit soon. When the line went dead, Adeline pocketed her phone, stepping closer to Aaron again. "Well," Aaron teased, "guess we're officially a success story. Think we should charge admission?" She giggled, lightly smacking his arm. "Or we could just live happily without turning it into a spectacle." A content hush settled in. The sunset glowed over the swaying lavender, painting them in gold and lilac hues. Aaron brushed hair from her face, eyes bright with love. "So," he said quietly, Where do we go from here? Adeline's smile shone like sunshine. Forward, she whispered. Wherever that is, we'll figure it out. He leaned in, kissing her softly. In that embrace, they both felt every sorrow, every fear, and every dark secret melt into something hopeful. The orchard might be miles away, but the healing it sparked lived on an enduring promise that no matter their scars or shadows, they were strong enough to face the future together.